Hello everyone, my name is Dennis, and this is ZetaChain Developer Office Hours. Thanks so much for joining. As always, you can um, leave comments on X or Discord, ask questions, and yeah, let me know if you want to know about specific things about building on ZetaChain. But we'll start with updates this month. Uh, we've had a lot of changes, and I'm super excited to share them with you guys. So let's get started. First of all, I would like to focus on the chains that we've updated um, support for this month. So on Solana side, we now have um, full support, including withdraw and call. So let's take a look at what currently is available uh, from Solana in terms of calling universal apps and making outgoing calls from uh, universal apps to Solana programs. So the gateway interface is fairly similar to what you've seen on EVM chains. You can deposit SOL tokens from Solana as well as SPL tokens. This will not trigger a universal contract call. We'll just send existing SPL or SOL tokens to ZetaChain as ZRC20 assets. You can also deposit and call, which is arguably a more interesting operation where not only do you deposit, but you also call a universal app in a same transaction. This is a really powerful mechanism that allows you to um, orchestrate complex transactions that are triggered from Solana, but then execute on ZetaChain and possibly make outgoing calls to connected chains. So this is really powerful stuff, and that's what many universal applications are going to be using for to get user input as well as tokens. You can deposit SPL tokens and call, but with this new upgrade currently on testnet, you can actually make calls from ZetaChain universal apps to programs on Solana. So for that to be possible, your program has to implement an on-call function that gets executed, and and it will be executed when a universal app calls gateway with a call or withdrawn calls. So this passes ZRC20 assets from ZetaChain to Solana and executes the program that you've specified, and on call is called on a connected program on Solana. We're calling them connected programs. There really is nothing special about them. It's just programs on Solana that implement certain interface that allow them to be called from universal apps. So you can, for example, if you have a DEX on Solana that you want to call, you can have a connected program on Solana that handles these on-call um, uh, on-call executions rate calls and execute swaps on Solana on one of the Solana dexes. So this is really powerful stuff, and we can look into it a bit later how we can actually test this. But you can also find this in the documentation. So now Solana supports both deposit and call, and withdraw and call for SOL and SPL tokens. So pretty much the whole package, which is super exciting. We've also added SUI support on testnet. And this is really cool because you can effectively do everything that you are able to do on EVM chains or Solana from SUI in terms of calling and depositing tokens from connected chain to ZetaChain. So from SUI, you can deposit tokens and also deposit and call universal apps, both native SUI as well as SUI fungible tokens are supported. And we've also added support for TON on testnet. You can already check it out. It works very differently than other chains that we're used to, but it's a very popular blockchain. And of course, we're getting a lot of feedback from developers that they want to build universal apps that can natively interact with TON. And that's exactly what we are providing. And now that TON is connected, if you want to build an application that is natively accessible for TON users, Telegram users, you can build a universal app on ZetaChain, and it by default will be compatible with any polls from the TON network. So let's take a look at how this works in the examples, in the example repo. So we have some examples that demonstrate this functionality. So if you clone the ZetaChain /example dash contracts, so example contracts, you will see a few examples, and some of them have been updated to support Solana and Sui. We're going to be adding Tom soon to this list as well. So if you go to the call example, you will now see, well, the EVM and ZetaChain contracts remained mostly unchanged, as they should be, because as new chains are added, you really don't need necessarily to make modifications in most scenarios to your universal app. But for the demo, we have a Solana program, and you can check it out. So as I said, it has to implement the on-call function. So it's a single entry point from ZetaChain. So whenever a universal app makes a call to Solana program, it is routed to on-call. Of course, you're free to route transactions however you want with from this on-call function, so you can execute any kind of logic. Here, we're actually dispatching two different events or messages. One is if the token being withdrawn is SOL, and the other is if it's an SPL token. So what's different about Solana is that aside from just regular payload data that you need to pass to a universal app, to call a connected program, you also need to pass all the accounts. So here you see that we have a list of accounts. We have 6 of them because this program supports both SOL and SPL tokens. We're going to add some more info on how to handle just SOL, but it's going to be just a subset of this, so the program is going to be much smaller. But if you go to the scripts file, you can see that we've added some Solana examples where you're making a withdrawal using 0c20 SOL, and it is withdrawn to Solana. And we also have withdrawn call, which is more interesting because you're actually making a call to that program. So right now we just have a script, but I'm going to improve this and probably make a separate function to make it easier to encode data the way Solana kind of expects. So here we're just calling the encode called args script with and tell which token we want to withdraw. If we go to the script, we'll see that it actually lists all the accounts we're going to need and encodes them using ABI encoding. because we've we've realized that using API across the board is probably much easier for developers to handle, because universal apps are EVM, so they naturally can handle API encoding out of the box, and we're using API encoding to send calls to connect chains as well. So this is very easy to do from a universal app running on ZetaChain. So here you see that we're encoding both accounts and the data being just SOL or SPL, depending on which token you're withdrawing. And it gets encoded into a bytes array that then gets passed to as encoded accounts and data, which in turn then gets passed to withdrawn call, and a program on Solana is called, the message gets decoded, and if it's sold, then one event is emitted, and if it's SPL, another event is emitted. And of course, you can pass any data in this arbitrary message. So you can make calls to other programs on Solana, or mint an NFT, put tokens in a vault, swap them, or do any kind of cool stuff with that. So this was about Solana withdrawn call functionality. Really excited to see what developers are going to build with this. Next is SUI. So you can see here we have a SUI directory with a very simple SUI contract that can do two things. It can deposit and call both SUI and SUI fungible tokens. So as you can see, it doesn't have on call yet because SUI withdrawn call is work in progress. So we're actively working on that. Probably share more a bit later on that. But right now, what you can do is you can make deposits and calls from SUI to universal apps on ZetaChain. Of course, you can make withdrawals back from ZetaChain to SUI. So if we go back to the docs, let's check out the docs again. So to call SUI, it's very straightforward, right? You can call universal apps from SUI, both from a front-end application, and we have examples in the toolkit for that. And you can also, existing SUI contracts can make deposit and calls to ZetaChain, which is great because our goal was to provide developers with the right tools for them to be able to build any kind of applications that can talk with connected chains very easily. And the goal is to have a gateway interface as similar as possible, so that developers can just build once and it works across the board with all the connected chains. So we're going to be shipping more examples, specifically around SUI withdraw call. It's going to be using API encoding already. If you check out GitHub, we have a PR open. So encourage, if you're curious about how it's going to be implemented, or want to get some technical alpha on how it's going to work in the near future, check it out. But yeah, super excited about that. And we're going to be shipping on examples as well, because Ton is already on testnet. You can check out protocol contracts on for some examples of how to use Blueprint, which is Ton's framework, to call to make deposit and call to universal apps in ZetaChain. And it's super fast actually. That's really cool. So the difference, kind of the difference between calling a single chain contract and making a cross chain call to a universal app is much less noticeable in terms of time with Tom than some other chains, notably because Tom, I believe, has infinite finality. So it's much faster. One more thing I wanted to share, and it's related to just developer experience in general. We've been improving and streamlining how uh, how developers interact with ZetaChain examples, and we're in the process of moving all of the functionality we have into a uh, into a package, ZetaChain NPM package. You can access it on any machine with Node.js installed, which is pretty much any macOS and Linux box. You can also use it from Windows as well. If you type npx ZetaChain next, which is the pre-release version, the stable version is going to be under latest. So ZetaChain next. It's going to go directly to npm and call the CLI tool, and see that we now have two commands already created localnet. So create is a command that lets you quickly start with one of our examples. So let's say you want to start with an NFT, and let's open the directory. And now you have a brand new NFC contract. You can learn install dependencies and already look into the contract. So the contract directory has both universal NFC app and a connected app on a VM chain. You can deploy it to any number of VM chains. You can run start, and it will start a local nets with these contracts deployed and tests running. So with just a few commands, you created a new NFT project and started a local net instance on your machine. And I just realized that I'm not pairing this. If they are me, actually, there again. Let's see. Okay, you know what's going on. Sorry about that. But yeah, basically, we just opened the NFT project and type localnet, start the tests running, and you can see that the universal NFT has been minted and transferred successfully between connected chains. You can go ahead and modify the contract and deploy them, and you've got a cross-chain universal NFT. And yeah, super powerful stuff. Now let's go back to the CLI. So, okay, so we created an NFT, but you can run it again to like create a hello world application, and inside hello you will then have a full project that you can start with, which is a very simple universal application that you can modify and kind of build on top of that. And the goal was just provide all the functionality we have in a easy to use package. but the CLI can also run local nets out of the box, so you don't need to have an example. You can just type ZetaChain local nets and then start in any directory you want, and it will immediately start local net. And by the way, local net now supports both EVM chains, Solana, and Sui. So you can run all of the examples we have, and you can see that there's Solana, all the details about the Solana environment, as well as Sui environment. So it makes it very easy to experiment with all these chains and make calls, and soon also make withdrawn calls to Sui. And yeah, you can also, I believe that's in the latest version as well, you can actually skip some of the chains. So it's just running EVM chains, and you can see it launched very, very quickly in just like a few seconds. You got ZetaChain and a few EVM chains up and running. So yeah. Oh, that's pretty much it on the updates. We've, just to recap, we've added Solana withdrawn call on testnet. Sui now is on testnet available with deposit and depositing call and withdraw. It's on call coming soon. So it's going to be the full package available to developers who don't leverage Sui and the universal apps. And Tom support is now on testnet, so you can check it out. Go to ZetaChain on GitHub and set up my contracts on, and we play around with the blueprint framework for calling uh, calling universal app to the on gateway. Okay, let's check out if we have any comments, any questions. It looks like we don't have any questions right now, but of course, please join our Discord server. There is a dev channel if you start building and you want to learn more about how it works, and if you have any questions about how to build, don't hesitate to tag me and Dennis on ZetaChain Discord. Don't hesitate to ask questions. And yeah, we've also added, I forgot to mention, but in the docs now, if you go to zetachain.com/docs, you will see a button at the bottom right corner, which opens a chat window with an AI agent that knows quite a few things about ZetaChain and guide you through building your universal app. They can ask questions about the contracts and how ZetaChain works, and if your application works, if your application can be implemented as a universal app. It can be, spoiler, but of course it's not a replacement for a live discussion. So go to Discord, ZetaChain server, and check out the dev channel. I think that's it for this month's update. Thanks so much for joining, and see you in the next one. Goodbye.